Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and I welcome all of you back to the station. So, previously, as in just yesterday, we spent a bit of time talking about Chris's initial reaction and response to the Geno Samuel documentary series. But what about the man himself? So, a very short little one today, and let's just get straight to work, shall we? Note on credibility. Geno Samuel has been deemed to be an unreliable narrator for the following reason. Has a habit of making dishonest and disingenuous statements. Well, we'll see about that when the time comes. I think it's what they call being afflicted by the solitude curse, which we'll be covering in a few days. Anyway, bear this in mind and use healthy skepticism when taking statements from the subject being discussed. Simply making the doc has already gotten attention from Chris, which prompted her to retcon her past. History has already been interfered with. There's this Geno's response, by the way, to criticism of his knockoff Sonichu medallion sales. Now, yes, Chris has already been interfered with, but I don't really feel like that's necessarily the greatest cause to do it, but what do I know? Edwin Gregorius, also known by his pseudonym Geno Samuel, born circa in the 1990s, is a Lithuanian-born YouTuber and musician. He is a Christuber and carpetbagger, known for creating the series Christian A Comprehensive History and Sonichu the Animated Series, as well as exploiting Chris's imaginary by selling items themed after him without his permission. Chris has generally expressed a positive opinion about Geno and has occasionally chatted with him. At one point, Chris asked Geno for input on creating a custom TSSSF card referencing him, and when Geno asked that the card not be made, Chris obliged. Geno, on the other hand, neglected to ask Chris for permission when selling items based on him, including appropriating his artwork for Sonichu the Animated Series, causing some pushback by Chris. Now, before some of you may be asking, well, then again, trolls have said in the past that they were mucky, but then again, they weren't really. They were just saying that to get under Chris's skin. They weren't actually making money off of Chris's intellectual property. I say intellectual property in the lightest possible way, but still, the trolls in the past, like Vivian G and Jimmy, they weren't actually making money off Chris. Geno is, well, and there are several others who do this as well, but we'll be covering them later. On the 13th of July 2025, Geno renamed his Chris-oriented YouTube channel from Geno Samuel 2.1 to Christian A Comprehensive History, and announced the transition the following day. So, let's get to work. A history. On the 26th of May 2018, Kopitz mentioned Geno to Chris during conversation and asked if he liked people making neutral documentaries about him. Chris replied that he wishes he was considered more famous than infamous. Well, it's a bit late now that for Chris. Late now. It's a bit late now for that, Chris. Chris, you are not Nelson Mandela. That's all I'm saying about that. On the 16th of June 2018, Chris expressed his hope that Geno and his fanbase will recover swiftly from Geno's termination on YouTube. On the 28th of August 2019, Chris, role-playing as Magi-chan, DM'd Geno thanking him for giving him and Magi-chan a better recollection of past events. He also told Geno to keep up the good work and told him to feel free to ask Magi-chan for any feedback or input from Geno's chronological history series. On the 14th of September 2019, Chris discussed Geno after he was brought up by someone in a livestream hosted by people associated with Sonichu Mania. Chris says that he likes Geno's series, adding that he didn't offend him too much. On the 20th of September 2019, Chris DM'd Geno and asked his input on creating a Genochu TSSSF custom card featuring him. Geno politely declined the request, and Chris in turn thanked him for responding and said the offer would remain open if he changed his mind. On the 21st of October, Chris DM'd Geno, telling him that he should read what happened in Simonchu, since Geno apparently liked one of Chris's comments. On the 11th of May 2020, Chris, as Sonichu, replied to Geno defending himself and his documentary series from wrongful criticism on Twitter. On the 22nd, Chris, as Sonichu, wrote a letter addressed to Kai and mentioned that in order for Kai to become a literal god, he would have to humble himself. He explained that Kai can learn to do so from Chris via those videos on Geno Samuel's YouTube channel. On the 10th of October, Chris, as Sonichu, wrote a comment on YouTube thanking Geno for finally using his preferred pronouns. On the 15th of November, Chris, as Sonichu, wrote a comment on YouTube to Geno for his Q&A video to celebrate 100,000 subscribers. On the 13th of December, the Q&A video would be published, and Geno answers Chris's question at the end. The question in turn is about why is Chris's life so fascinating to Geno? And Geno answered to the effect of Chris's life seems almost so wild and extravagant and completely almost non-realistic. It feels like a story that does not exist, but it's absolutely set in real time. And yet it did exist. And it's still ongoing. It is a life almost it is a fascinating thing to behold. Also, Kawaii Sandbag mentioned and discussed Geno a few times to Chris over their calls, due to being a fan of his documentary series. On the 11th of March 2021, Chris replied to Geno after he left a joke reply to a meme of Chris. On the 31st of March 2021, Chris DM'd Geno, upset over Geno's April Fool's joke, which entailed altering the title of the thumbnails of Chris Chan, A Comprehensive History, to replace Chris with Donald Trump. In a 4th of July letter in 2022, Chris mentioned a desire to collaborate with Geno, writing that he would contact Geno as soon as he was available. The latter reacted with "fuck" in a Kiwi Farms post on learning of Chris's comment. On the 21st of October 2023, Chris viewed and commented during a live stream on Geno's channel in which Geno played back old videos of Chris. In 2023, Geno began offering knockoff Sonichu medallions for sale. His medallions also included a certificate of authenticity in an imitation of Chris, commonly including a certificate in his own for sale medallions. Chris criticized Geno's medallion product in a 14th of December 2023 post, writing, "Geno, don't even with the certificate. 3D printed never surpassed the full soul effort in handcrafting. It's not funny." Not that it ever compelled Chris to actually start production again on his own medallions, but that's besides the point. On the 10th of January 2024, Chris congratulated Geno on his wife's pregnancy. On the 3rd of February 2024, Chris began advertising more Chris-themed items for sale, including a shirt with a "Want Woman" logo on it. Chris objected to it, asking, "Can you please stop the Want Woman shirt?" Geno appears unlikely to accede to Chris's request. In a Chris Chan Sonichu subreddit thread about Chris's comment, Geno replied to another Reddit user that he was watching the sales roll in and defended offering this item for sale. On a live stream on the 29th of March 2025, Chris got asked about Geno, prompting him to reply with, "I have only talked a little bit with Geno Samuel, and just the way he conducts his videos. There's like a few things that can be criticized. Like he can not be so focused on the times where I was taken advantage of, especially with those theoretical relationships or anything, and I mean anything, NSFW." In April of 2025, Geno began releasing Sonichu, the animated series, which took Chris's artwork for the Sonichu comics, notably Sonichu issue 0, and applied limited animation to the pages, but without Chris's permission. The trailer and 2 episodes had been uploaded when Chris filed a copyright complaint, and YouTube terminated the series and placed a copyright strike on Geno's channel. Chris later lifted the strike after discussion with Geno, who chose not to continue the series on YouTube, instead posting the remainder onto Twitter. So that's apparently the way he worked around it, I guess. I don't know, because I don't think I follow Geno. Because I don't really use Twitter anymore anyway. But I have it would be interesting to know exactly what if the series is still going. I've no idea, but you never know. Meanwhile, carpet bagging, Patreon. Geno has a Patreon which is used for multiple projects, including both Chris Chan and non-Chris Chan related stuff. Despite that, the subscriber count closely aligns with the Chris projects. As of August of 2025, the peak occurred with episode 85 of Chris Chan A Comprehensive History. During March of 2024, at around 845 subscribers, and then steadily decreased as the series went on a hiatus afterwards. A slight uptick in subscribers when it was seen when Geno attempted to make Sonichu the animated series in April of 2025, going from 298 to 327, and upon its cancellation, the decline resumed 260 in August. When Chris had a Patreon account since terminated after the incest scandal, he was a follower on Geno's Patreon, though it is not known to have subscribed. Surprised we didn't even see Chris's name be mentioned in the credits. Or maybe it was, and maybe he just did it under a different name. Atlas VPN. On the 18th of March 2023, Geno premiered episode 73 of Chris Chan A Comprehensive History, which contained a sponsor plug for Atlas VPN. After recapping one of the Magi-chan 111448 tweets, the episode began an advertisement for Atlas VPN, which lasted for over a minute. In response to criticism over the timing of the ad placement, Geno answered, "You usually don't have that choice. You've asked to place it in the first part of the video to ensure the highest number of people watching and to integrate it with the normal video flow." Genuine Productions. In late 2023, Geno opened an Etsy store called Genuine Productions, where he made 42 sales before the shop was closed. On the 13th of March 2023, Geno replied to a Twitter user who had experienced major problems using Etsy, specifically not receiving money after orders were fulfilled, still being expected to pay taxes and all that. Cases being opened and appealed without the owner's notice, and no response from Etsy themselves via email regarding the issues. Geno said that the same thing happened to him, jokingly saying that Etsy banned him for being too popular. Right, okay, Geno, calm down there. genosamuel.com. Since at least April of 2022, Geno has owned a website under the domain name genosamuel.com, using it as a hub for his Chris content and other personal projects. In late 2023, presumably after his Etsy failed, he began to sell bootleg Chris merchandise using the site. He started with his own 3D printed miniature Sonic totems and Solitaire and Rosechew medallions, and orders contained a knockoff certificate of authenticity and signature from Geno. On the 14th of December 2023, Chris criticized the certificate and the fact that Geno used a 3D printer for his medallion, saying it's not funny. This did not discourage Geno, however, as he still sells them, as well as the medallions of Chris's other characters, Blake's, Bubbles, Angelica, and Sylvana, as of May of 2025. By the 3rd of February 2024, pre-orders were available for several Chris-themed hats and shirts. On that day, Chris commented on Geno's YouTube channel community post promoting the merch, particularly disapproving of the "Want Woman" shirt and requesting that he stops it. This did not discourage Geno, as he still sells the shirt as of May of 2025. And Sonichu, the animated series. In April of 2025, Geno began releasing Sonichu, the animated series. The series was funded by Patreons on Patreon, and patrons that pledged at least $5 per month would have their name added in the credits of the episodes. In the early morning hours of the 5th of May 2025, Geno made an announcement on Patreon regarding Chris's takedown. Hey y'all, so I've got a copyright strike from Christine Chandler on YouTube, which caused Sonichu the Animated Series episodes 1 and 2 to be taken down. Totally understandable since it is her artwork that I'm using, though those are not her characters, but that's besides the point. Anyway, so this project is dead. Anyone who joined my Patreon to support the series is free to leave or ask for a refund if you like. If you're willing to stick around, you're in luck because this means I can work faster on other projects like documentaries and music. Thank you for all understanding. All the best. GG. Initially, Geno heavily promoted his Patreon alongside the series, and updated his Patreon subscription to mention the series. Geno also animated at least two of Chris's Sonichu classic strips, both of which are locked behind a paywall on Patreon. Despite the copyright strike, the public statement of disapproval for Chris, and Geno's statements of agreement to cease continuing his project, he premiered episode 3 on the series on Twitter later the same day. Notably, Geno makes money from the post engagement on Twitter due to paying for a blue checkmark. Yeah, so, and also notes. Geno has made posts falsely claiming that he is not gaming a system for selfish game. Regarding his sales, when he was ripped off Chris's design on Sonichu medallions, that about his Sonichu the Animated Series, that those are not Chris's characters he used. When he has used Chris's characters, such as the fictionalized Chris Chan and Rednog Natsu Natesurk, that he does not read the Cwiki, which he has used material from in his series Chris Chan: A Comprehensive History, that his series is unbiased when there is bias within it. Yeah, surprisingly, quite a bit of a mixed reaction, actually, the more we think about it when we talk about Geno Samuel. But then again, I think some of it's understandable in a way because, well, Geno does need to make money somehow, and you know what? It's been proven that his track record proves that it's actually quite successful, and well, this, however, might lead into discussions about the Sonichu curse. What is it, you may be asking? Well, I'm not entirely sure what it is myself, but we'll be discussing it very, very soon. So, with all that being said, it is time once again to leave the station. So, all aboard!